So bringing her onto the stage to speak about RM and AI in action, and also bringing together the themes of the technological excitement of AI and also the mindful use of it, Dr. Gráinne Watson.
Charlie. Thank you, Charlie. I'm just going to check I can use a clicker and hold a microphone. So give me a second. Way. So welcome, everybody. This afternoon is really going to be the how RM sees this afternoon. And so it starts with me, and I'm going to walk you through our marking engine, but then we're going to look at some of our other products and show you how they've actually had to adapt with Gen AI arriving, and then everybody going, oh, well, how does this thing actually work? So at our last conference, I briefly talked about the marking engine and the first couple of POCs that we'd done and what we had gotten out of them. And so I'm going to briefly do that again, and then I'm going to talk to you about where we are now. And so to repeat a lot of the themes that have come up today, what was really important to us that we could evidence at every available opportunity why we did what we did. But similarly, that Gen AI was only one part of what we did. We have a series of workflows that sit in our engine, and they are what define what we ask, how we're scoring, all of those things. We only pull information from Gen AI. It doesn't sit at the core of the model. So how it works is we feed logic, so that's rubrics, i.e. how you need to mark this exam. That's in there, as well as frameworks that possibly sit around that for spelling, for grammar, for any of that. Then we use data, both real and synthetic. So we will put in exams that have been taken by humans, and we will then use agentic AI really sustainably, Rita, I would say. We use it really sustainably. In order to really get to explain why something has marked the way it has marked. Because what we've heard a lot over today is that evidence is really, really important. So we need to be able to show why a mark was given. And that's not just us telling you why a mark was given, we need to be able to show you why a mark was given. And so that's where you get to the next two bits, and that's the consensus experience. How have all of our markers marked? Whether they're AI markers or whether they're human markers, how have they marked? And how are we looking at that and how are we assessing it? And then finally, it's that feedback. The feedback will come instantaneously and it will tell you why it has marked the way it has marked. It will say, based on the rubrics that you provided to me, this is a 14 out of 16 answer, or this is a 2 out of 12 answer. So it's not throwing a number at you and you just have to accept that that's the number. And that goes back to the point that you made. Well, how are we going to show people? You have to show them. And irrespective of who you're showing, you actually have to show them. So that was sort of the basis of what we did. And then really the core point of what we showed was that we could match and complement human marking. This marking engine is not about replacing humans. It goes to the point that everybody made and that Matt finished on, which is there are areas that we're not getting to with purely human marking. There is a big spread that we're seeing human marker to human marker, and there's nuance that's in there that we feel this will help with. It will level a playing field for a lot of students. It will also help accreditors train their markers better. If you have a core set that you love, when we went out to talk to everybody, we said, well, can we get some of your past essays, please? And can we get how they were marked? And everybody rushed to give us their best markers. And I said, I don't just want your best markers. I need the good, the bad, and the ugly markers because I need to use that as a model to then start to see how we mark more effectively. Because if you just give me your good ones, then I don't get a proper view of how the assessment has gone. I get the view that you want me to see, but that's not necessarily the entirety of the view. And, you know, as a recovering academic myself, I'm sure I have not covered myself in glory in some of the things that I have marked, and therefore you need that widespread. So when I spoke to you the last time, what I spoke about was we had done long form English essays. So English as a foreign language essays, and then English language. And that was important because English language is much more nuanced, as we know, right? So it's not just the grammar needs to be correct, it needs to have this, this, and this, but what is the cognitive level about? Have you connected pieces together that you needed to? So since then, what we've done is we've done a variety of POCs. And what I'm going to talk to you about today, last time I spoke to you about the very end of doing it. This time I'm going to talk you through the very first example of putting something through this marking engine and what it looks like and why. So some of the complex POCs we're doing at the minute is maybe 30, 40,000 essays that can be on a variety of subjects, right? So it could be something about human geography. It could be something about a frog that only exists in Singapore. And the beauty of that is it will show us if all of those workflows that we've put in place and all those nuances that we're trying to understand are actually working. And it will show us those. So these two detailed results, this is one of the most interesting bits that we're looking at because it is an accountancy exam. And what that means is you have to be able to take the words, understand the words, and apply it to a massive spreadsheet that's come alongside it that will explain a P&L from start to finish. So that makes this really quite complex in how you have to understand it. So what are those first commonalities that we see, not just with this one, but with a lot of what we've done? So the first one is that for some answers, the marking engine can mark as well as humans from the beginning. So question 2, for example, you'll see that both those means are exactly the same. So first time through it, a human mean mark was the same as the AI marker. And that's not something I would have expected to see straight off the bat, but that's what we got. But not all answers are the same, right? So as question 1, or as question, the detailed results show you here, there is a gap there. And that can be anywhere. If you're looking at RMSE, that's 5.69. If you're looking at MAE, that's 4.86. And they're both useful for various reasons. Because MAE, what you will get is you will get something that doesn't really stick to outliers. With RMSE, what you will get is it will show you and it will focus very particularly on where there are big gaps. And we need the answer to both of those things. So what MAE will tell us is what the correlation was and what everybody sort of centered around. And that's really important from the very beginning because it helps you to see where your rubric is right. And it is so right that everybody's marking the same way, whether it's human or AI. And what the wider one will show you is where those gaps are. And there are gaps, and that's the bit I need you to keep in your head. There are gaps in marking. We know that. We've talked about it all day. So overall, second point, AI consistently awards lower marks than a human. And again, that's because there's a gap in the process. We need you to think about that in the back of your head. There's a gap. What is the gap? And then the third thing is distribution of scores will differ significantly. The biggest differential is still human to human. It is not human to AI. It is human to human, which points to the fact that there's a bit that we're not getting here. Doesn't mean that human marking is wrong. It just means it's very nuanced. And then we need to figure out how we get people to mark more closely together so we gave a fairer and more ethical experience to whoever's papers are being marked. Because nobody wants to be the outlier at a D. Nobody minds being the outlier if they get an A star. They don't want to be the outlier if they were the one that got the D. So how do we, that's RM, work on consistency? It's statistical, I'm afraid. And I'm glad I wasn't first back after lunch. You've all had some time to even in. But we look at AI marker confidence. And so what we do is we're judging how confident was it in what it marked against the mark that's actually given and against the mark that... first bit, how the AI marked. We ask it, are you confident with the mark that you've given? So we assess that first. Then we look at that confidence versus marker disagreement. First with those AI markers, and then secondly with the human markers. And then the third thing that we do is that top-tail analysis. And top-tail analysis you'll all know very easily. You take out your lower outliers and you take out your top outliers, and that goes to show you that piece in the middle that you want to see. What does everybody agree on? And the maps sort of show you that. So the top one, we've taken the outliers out, and the confidence all seems to be in around the same place. And you want confidence as high to 1 as you can get it. That's sort of how it works. And then that second one is sort of that distribution of confidence changes. And you can see once the outliers are removed, you get a more positive mark. And then that third one is just that scatter graph, which shows you, again, there is an agreement around what that mark is. And we look at this kind of statistical analysis for every single question. And we don't do it via Gen AI, right? So we are looking at this for every single question that we do. And so I remember in the first time I talked about this, people were asking me, well, how can you be sure of the marks? 2 ways. One, there's instant feedback. And the second one is this. We do this for every single question that comes through. It is our way of assessing if we're right or not. And the reason being, this is summative assessment. You can't be wrong. So, you'll be pleased to hear I'm actually nearly finished. I wanted to keep this one short and sweet. What are the takeaways for this for us? So the first one is that feedback is really, really important, both in terms of showing whoever's going to look at it, whether that is a teacher or a marker. And the marker for me was particularly interesting. When we first started doing this, what drove me as a recovering academic was how do we make this more ethical for everybody that's doing it? When I started to speak to our customers about it, they said, you know what this would be great for? Training our markers. And that hadn't occurred to me before. But now that I've spoken to loads of them, they've all said the same thing. It absolutely is. And why is that? Because we know there's a gap. There's a gap between what is written down in a rubric or a framework and what somebody marks to. And what this should help along that path is getting to that point. What is that differential and how do we get there between it? Second thing is using something like a marking engine. This is not an algorithm, right? It is not. It is a series of workflows that sit above a level of Gen AI. And we use a variety of models. There's not one that we use. We use a variety for a reason. But the IP for us exists in the fact that we've been in the education business for 50 years. We do summative assessment every single year. We've just had a very successful summer of, nearly 15 million exams. So this is something that we're very confident in doing because we work with accreditors like yourselves to get those marks out. The third thing, and this goes back to what Matt said, but also what everybody else has been talking about, is choice, right? If you are going to do this, what way do you want to do it? And so as you can see on the left-hand side, you can choose what way you want to use AI and marking, and you should. I don't think anything should be 100% AI marked, which I probably shouldn't say, but I don't. You can do 100% double marking, you can do 100% AI marking and 100% human review. You can do a percentage of double marking. You can double mark only at grade boundaries. Choosing what way you want to use this technology is really, really important because you cannot do everything. And we go back again to what is the outcome? There is loads of this out there and you can do whatever you want with it. But what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve? And where is your biggest problem? Is it that at grade boundaries, which has been shown, humans will always go the easy way, whether it's good or not. They don't want to give somebody the lower mark, so they'll always go higher. And we do see that with AI. AI is not doing that. So are we going to get to a better level of basis? And what this is, so Ava is our platform. You guys, if you use our stuff, know it either as assessor or assessment master, but it's basically our new front door and the platform into those two things. And then what AI marking is an awful lot of things before you hit that LLM. Again, Reid, I'm looking for like a green badge when I get out of here to say we're doing this ethically in the right way. But the whole point is it remains one tool by which you take everything that you know about marking and assessment and you apply it. It is not a silver bullet. And Lucy said, it's not a magic box, and she couldn't be more right. We have had to put all of our knowledge around this from helping to mark all of these exams to get to this point. We didn't magically throw something in and go, boom, it works. It doesn't. It took a really, really long time. And we've carefully thought about why we're doing it. And we sit in quite an interesting position because we don't deal with learners. We enable accreditors to do so, and that leaves us in a very special position. And it's something that we take very seriously, that we have to try and enable accreditors to deliver the best exams that they can. So we have to make sure that the technology works and that we have tried to remove bias and that we have tried to understand exactly what they're trying to do. And with that, I'm going to stop and leave you. Thank you very much.
Any questions, Ngonya?
Just a quick one about slide 2.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't. Thanks. Just a quick one about slide 2. You couldn't read what was on the spreadsheet. Are you able just to kind of run along the metrics, please? Thanks. That
There you
one.
go.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, do you want me to talk through them or you wanted to see them? Oh, okay, sorry. So number of candidates, the number of marks that are available, what the AI mean mark is, what the human mean mark is, what the mean confidence level is, what the minimum confidence level is, and then we go down to what's the mean difference between the AI and the human, the standard deviation difference, then the RMSE, and then the MAE. So the root mean squared error and the mean big number error. It will come to me when I'm not standing up in front of you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gráinne. I think it looks really interesting. And I'm really interested in this for marker training as well, particularly, with the apprenticeship changes and the devolution of more assessment decisions to centres. Have you had any thoughts? It's a bit off-piste, so
Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Okay. Have you had any thoughts about how we educate markers in using this sort of technology effectively, not over? Because what I see, like in my organisation day to day, when we're talking about AI, for example, people start to rely on using Copilot, for example, and it's just like their kind of EA at this point. So if we're going to introduce that into an environment with markers who potentially are using these AI technologies and other technology in their day-to-day, what do you think we need to do in terms of supporting them to use it appropriately and ethically?
I think it's a really good question. And last year we invested in a training team at RM, both for our digital assessment, but also for things like this. Because I think what we have previously done with technology is we have thrown it over the wall to people and we've gone, right, well, you figure it out. And they're like, well, that's great, but I teach French. So what am I going to do with this? And so what we are doing is guidance that sits around it. But what I would also suggest is you do like a yearly refresher course. And I do think, even though it wasn't my idea, but when one of our customers said it to me, I went, oh my God, you're absolutely right. You could use this to train markers. You could start to, I think grade boundaries for me are really important, but then it's also the understanding of the rubric. And I don't know who was talking. Oh, you were talking about, can you and should you, early on when you're looking in an exam, should you see if it's going to be a stinker or not? Yes, why don't we do that with markers? Why don't we have somebody take that exam before it ends up with kids and they're all like, what's going on? So those were conversations that we were having. And I think there has to be effective training. I think anybody who's providing the technology needs to explain the way that they're doing it. But then I think there's also a connection between, I don't think guidelines are good enough if you're going to look at doing a level of devolution around who grades this. I think there needs to be more than guidance. I think there needs to be, here is the way we are going to look at doing this for these reasons, and here are the outcomes that we are looking to achieve. Because I think without that, people are just going to do what it means to them, which is not necessarily a standardization that we would like for summative exams. So I think that training is the answer, but I also think, and part of the reason that we wanted to do this was to get all of these minds in a room together, how do we collectively come up with a path that makes this work and allows us to have those conversations and say, we as experts in this field believe that this approach is the best one that explains this, this and this. And again, Lucy said, we're allowing things to be done to us. I do think we now have to sort of stand up and say, this is the way we want to use this for these reasons. Because I think otherwise we're going to be in Wild West territory. It's social media all over again. And then we're like, the horse is sort of bolted now. So I think our ability to early on say, here is the use case for this, we feel it works these ways, is really probably the best way to go about it.
I think it's, I've lost the mic, but
I can hear you.
Thank you. As a sector coming up with those questions that we think people need to ask, as well as experts, like, have you thought about X, Y, and Z as well? But no, that's fab. Thank you. Thank you.
Rita, this better be about the green badge you're giving me.
It's a green badge, yeah, straight away. No, I'm just looking at the flow there. I wonder, I hadn't seen anyone who's kind of doing, we hear a lot about humans in the loop and humans on the loop. I feel like that's the first time I've seen humans before the loop. I don't know, am I understanding it correctly? And if so, that's amazing and that needs to be shared more widely.
Yeah, we start with humans. They're the experts on how it works. Yeah, so we use how they've marked first, their rubrics, what they've said, And then we use that in order to use very small agentic AI, really very small,
Fantastic.
doesn't do anything. It's one burger. We use it to then train those agentic AI to mark in and around those lines. And that is our way in, because I think that we have to find a way to mirror it almost exactly in order to get to, the percentage of marks that we're looking to. We can't be 5 marks out on a summative exam. We have to be within 1.
Yeah, and does that mean then it doesn't nullify the need for human on the loop afterwards?
Never
either,
at all.
right?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I am not an advocate of AI only marking.
How do you remove the bias that's been discussed potentially within AI marking, and how do you account for, I guess, the potentially very different cohorts that any given customer will have? Our cohorts are all mature professional students. We've spent a lot of time talking about school age. There's everything in between and more. It's just a question I'm really interested in. I think there's probably quite a lot of detail behind it.
There's a big level of detail behind it, but it's also, you bring the knowledge in first, and that's the point of dealing with the people who have marked these. Cohorts are always going to be different. I've had amazing cohorts, I've had terrible cohorts, and everything in between. And so I think this marking engine, the whole point about it was that it lived and breathed, and it could change, and we could prompt it in ways that were useful. So the fact that, for example, it only uses Gen AI in part means that as Gen AI gets better, that gets all the benefits of it without having to do anything else. But what that also means is we have the ability to feed in all of the human views about it. And what we've looked at doing with one of our customers in APAC, and so when somebody said, when is this going to get summative assessment? New Zealand are doing it in April. They are going to mark 2 of their exams wholly using AI marking. There will be a human in the loop, but this will be the first time that a country has done a vast amount of summative assessment themselves. And it's understanding that there are going to be differences. And the marking engine does pick it up. And then it's all that statistical analysis that we do as well. Because what we would do is we would look at all of the years that we had, and we would say, this year appears quite like 1995. And in that year, what we found was this, 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 and this. And so it's the detail behind it that you want. And then it's the ability to pivot. And it can do that because it thinks and feels and breathes, given the workflows that we put in.